I pass the lob to you. So take it away.
So, I mean, when I pitched this, I basically had the idea of spreading these ideas out over the course of the next few episodes because there is a lot that you can talk about. And as the upcoming events for Road to WrestleMania, as we head to Elimination Chamber come up, there's plenty of updates we're going to have that we could probably adapt into these things because these are constants, right? So here's my thing. Generally, I'm happy the company's doing better, but typically when companies do better, they also get to a point where they can stagnate in certain places because they can coast. I'm sure y'all would kind of agree with that to some degree, right? Like it's easy to coast off of certain things. So I guess to just rip the band-aid off, some of the things that I've noticed over the past 2 years of Triple H being in charge is that there have been so many longer term stories that a lot of things kind of get pushed to the side. Like certain people kind of have to wait longer just to get an opportunity because without certain levels of pacing with certain stories, you don't get enough short-term bursts. You don't get enough people being integrated into the bigger, more prominent stories, and it holds a lot of people back in a certain way to where like it feels like they're either stagnating on the verge of releases, which we'll get to in a second, or they just don't have an opportunity to really push past the stuff they were given. Like some people do really well with the stuff they were given. One of the people we advocate the most for is Chad Gable. And despite how well he's done in a lot of situations, it feels like he hasn't gotten his just due. Drew McIntyre supposedly felt similarly recently with the stuff with LA Knight, which thankfully is, much more cooperative now. But it seems as though because they keep pushing storylines that were built from 2 years ago that aren't like on and off, but more so continuing on and on and on, some people kind of are pushed to the bench, if you will. And it puts a lot of their careers on hold, a lot of things in perspective. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm coming from with it. And there are a number of different talents we can talk about, a number of different stories you could talk about. But I think one of the most interesting scenarios we've had so far has been the Rumble fallout. Like there's been a lot of people talking about their opinions on, the winners of the Rumbles. I know you guys talked about it a bit last week. I saw Eric gave an impassioned, not rant, but an impassioned speech about how, like, there shouldn't be an issue with Jey Uso winning because essentially we've seen stuff like this before. We've seen people get multiple opportunities for the championship before winning a Rumble or before winning a big match to go into the Mania main event. And while I do agree with that to some degree, I'll actually offer you a different opinion, Eric, if you'll hear me out, Mr. GNX.
Go ahead.
I don't think that Jey Uso winning the Rumble is a bad thing. I think the surrounding environment that he's in makes it a bit underwhelming. Jey Uso winning the Rumble ain't a bad thing. But when you consider the surrounding context of what's going on, the fact that most of the Bloodline members are so prominent up the card, it's hard to kind of see other people get there to some degrees. The fact that a person like Jey Uso in reality could have had a whole different path to WrestleMania that would have been just as fulfilling. If you bring it back to a couple months ago, I feel like the WWE didn't do him service with the Intercontinental title,
Right,
if I'm being
right.
honest.
I can
And
agree with that.
I feel like he could have had a longer stint in that division that could have given him a WrestleMania moment here with the Intercontinental Championship that I feel like would have been just as it would have sufficed. And I think that Jey Uso going after the World Championship at this year's Mania isn't a bad thing. It's one of many options they could have picked. And I think that's the other part of it, where when it comes to Triple H, he has a lot of different ways he can go about certain things, but he usually picks the safest option, which is ironic because most people thought the safest option would have been CM Punk or John Cena. With Jey Uso, it's actually a pretty safe option in its own right because he is arguably the most over person in terms of crowd reaction right now. But when I think about Jey Uso and what's going on, I also feel like the field of champions doesn't work to his advantage as much as I'd like. He has connections with Cody and Gunther, but I think to myself, what if they had Kevin Owens win the championship and it had been Kevin and Jey at WrestleMania? Talk about a storyline that's been built on the side, right? Like how much Kevin has been saying for years Jey was no good for Sammy, right?
Right.
The fact that these two had faced off in the main event of WrestleMania before, to bring it back to that, which that's another discussion down the road. What really is the main event of WrestleMania when you're talking about the Royal Rumble? But, I think it's more so factors like that that make it a bit underwhelming for me. I'll tell y'all right now, I hinted at it a couple weeks ago, but I actually wanted AJ Styles to win the Rumble because I feel like AJ had a perfect story going to Mania, considering his story was all about still proving that he was phenomenal. And AJ was injured at the time, so nobody really knew for sure. I know there was a rumor going around, but nobody knew for sure he was going to be in the Rumble. And the idea of AJ winning in the match that he debuted in, the fact that we know he doesn't have many years left, and for him to still prove to everybody in the midst of his midlife crisis that he's still phenomenal. The fact that the champions are Gunther and AJ, the fact that AJ has a history with, not Gunther and AJ, Cody and Gunther. The fact that AJ has a history with Cody from last year, where a lot of this storyline started. He could have teased going after Cody one more time, but then chose Gunther because he feels as though Gunther is the bigger challenge. And to really show that he's phenomenal, to beat a boss level person like Gunther, could have did him some good. It would have really made the championship victory feel earned. And it also would have fixed the issue that a lot of people have with AJ at WrestleMania, where they don't have many memorable AJ matches at Mania. Not to say that they weren't.
I like the match with him and Shane. It wasn't bad. And him and Jericho.
Oh, no, I think that those matches are good, but the problem is that people have this stigma that AJ isn't having AJ level matches at Mania. So if you put him in the ring with Gunther and you don't get that match, the streak continues. But if you have him in the ring with Gunther and they have the match that people think they can have, the streak breaks. And AJ gets that Mania matchup that everyone can remember, which in turn will make people look fondly on some of the other ones because they'll realize, wait, AJ actually was having decent performances. We just weren't feeling it. And to have AJ win the title at Mania, give him that one last WrestleMania moment, and help carry the brand on Raw alongside some other people, I think would have been kind of nice. Because honestly, when it comes to Gunther's title reign, there's nothing wrong with him being champion. It's just everybody was preoccupied doing something else.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough focus put on him as champion because everyone's like, Drew's trying to kill Punk. Judgment Day is trying to kill itself. Jay for a while was just vibing, and then went after the Intercontinental title. A lot of people going after the Intercontinental Championship over the World Heavyweight title. Seth was gone for a while, and then he came back, and then he remembered Punk existed. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a lot of stuff happening that was taking away from Gunther. And it's not to say they weren't, hinting at Gunther. Like Punk said, when I'm done with Drew, Gunther, it's you. Seth said, I'd still want that title. Damian Priest tried to grab it a few times, but like everyone was so caught up in their own stuff that Gunther was kind of like eh.
Afterthought. He was afterthought.
And they could have played off of it. You could have had Gunther go on a vacation being like, there's no competition here. I'm going to take a big vacation. And you could have showed like, I mean, like he could have did what his NBA counterpart Nikola Jokic wanted to do, leave. Just leave. And you could have showed photos of him on vacation with his wife, him smoking cigars, him out on the town, him cutting promos from different locations. It would have been great, but they didn't do that.
But he's low-key kind of doing something similar to what you're saying anyway. He's undercutting Jay. He's like, I beat you already. I don't have no desire to face you. He's basically saying like you're only here because the crowd like you.
And that's fine. And he's supposed to do that because that's the obvious story there. But what I'm saying is that would mean even more if Gunther was getting pressed more often during his title reign, post Randy Orton, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and quick question, not to piggyback off of like, because I know Jay said not to say this, but because you bring up Gunther, do you feel like that they might have done his title run a disservice during this run now that Jay's a number one contender and the fact that he's going at him possibly at WrestleMania? Do you think because of, despite him having a dominant run and him being who he is, do you still feel like it might have underwhelmed his World Heavyweight Championship run where they could have done a lot more?
I just don't think that the crowd is catching on to him, honestly. I don't think it's nothing to do with his booking. I'm just saying him as a character, he's just a dominant figure, and that's all that it is. You can only be so dominant but have these great ass matches and be looked at as a dominant figure. you have to have something else that carries along with it. And honestly, I just don't think that the crowd is latching onto him. Like, say they would latch onto a normal like heel or like an Andre the Giant type heel or somebody that's a force that you just don't really want to fuck with, like Kane was or The Undertaker. He's dominant, but he's dominant to the point where you know he's beatable.
I
You know?
would I would disagree. I think that they were on the verge of that, but once he became less of the focus on Raw, that's when it waned. And I do think that is part of the booking issue because part of his character was the fact that he's an elitist. He believes he is the top of the industry, not just as a character, but as a wrestler. And he likes competition, but he doesn't see much competition amongst his peers. They didn't really get to play into that enough after the Cody thing, which I think was a big deal. Once he lost to Cody, even though he didn't lose in an embarrassing fashion, he lost. Well, he did. He didn't lose in a weak fashion. He lost in a fashion where it's like, really? And I think that when you see where Gunther was poised before, and see who could have won that matchup, I think that did affect people, like a people's reaction to him. Because after that, that's when he started to wane on Gunther being the presence he was before. They tried to make Gunther more vulnerable, which in my opinion worked against them. Because if Gunther could beat people up, destroy them in the ring, and talk his shit, people would continue to resonate with that. And it worked at first, but after Gunther lost to Cody, which we kind of agreed. I think Matt, we kind of agreed it should have been the reverse. It should have been Cody being the more vulnerable champion.
Yeah.
It just kind of broke what he was. It hit the very core of what he was trying to work on, and people couldn't believe him anymore because somebody was able to call his bluff and get him.
And on top of that, I feel like he's more prominent and he's more, how do I put it? Like he's more of a heel or more of like a figure with Imperium with him. That's just my opinion. I can get trashed in the comments, but I feel like when they broke up Imperium, I feel like that mystique that they had went right along with it. So it's like I feel like that's kind of like there was too many blows to his character.
Yes,
Like there's like right now him being champion is like you're believable that he's champion, but you also know he's beatable. Like there's nobody that does not second guess that Jay can beat Gunther at WrestleMania. Like the match that they had at Saturday Night's main event, I think he can beat him.
Hold
Whoa,
on,
bro,
hold on, wait. Let him finish. Let him
All
finish.
right.
why I say that because Jay Uso has come close to beating Roman so many different times. We've witnessed it. He's actually pinned Roman Reigns. So, like, it's not above the realm of possibility that he can beat Gunther, bro. I just don't. It's like he's beatable. Sammy, the homeless nigga beat him. I'm just throwing that out there. The homeless nigga beat him at WrestleMania. He's beatable. Chad Gable almost beat him twice. Might have been 3 times. I lost count after a while. The match was crazy. Like, but he's beatable. We all know he's beatable. And as long as we know that he's beatable, Jay stands a fair chance. So that moment at WrestleMania of him winning is believable.
All right.
That's all that I'm saying.
All right, here you go.
Okay, now that he put it like that, that doesn't make sense. Because I mean, I agree with you. I don't think there's any. I'm not gonna agree with you on. I don't think there's people that feel like Jay can't beat Gunther because I feel like there's people that really feel like Gunther can beat him.
Matt, mute, real quick.
Like I really feel that way. But as far as what's gonna make sense to the story and what's gonna be the feel good moment going into WrestleMania, especially going into Vegas, yes, because Jay is the most over person right now on that roster. Who else do you know is coming out there and before he speaks, they have to restart his music just because the crowd wants to hear it again? Like,
Well,
yeah.
to be fair, that.
But it's gonna almost don't mean shit. Oh, it don't. You're 100% right. Your dog is cute, by the way. But no, I mean, it don't mean shit. It really don't. And you're 100% right. Almost don't mean shit. And that's why a lot of people feel like Jay is not going to beat Gunther. A lot of people feel that way. I'm not one of those people. I feel like Jay is going to get the title, but it's going to be one of those moments where it's like, you got the title, you got this. What's next?
Well, that
It's
was
going to
actually
be that what next. It's going to be that what next factor for a lot of people.
that's
They did that with Gunther and Cody too. You know,
Right, but see that, but that's the thing. That's the thing, and I think that's what Tyler's kind of alluding to. It's more so something we always say. They book themselves into this creative corner.
yes.
So where now it's like you can't flesh out the story enough. Because what are you going to do? You're going to do Kevin Owens after Mania. You could have did Kevin Owens now and had him win the title, and and he has a connection with the bloodline, and his whole ordeal right now is I'm going after everybody who's wronged me, my friends, my family, whoever has wronged me. I'm going after them. Jay is not outside of that wrongdoing.
And Kevin
ends
up in the situation where he feuds with the person after Mania as opposed to during the. It's a shame because Jay, like I said, like if they had properly given Jay more time in the Intercontinental title division, you could have pictured Jay more as a proper champion as opposed to just having a championship moment. You could have shown Jay could have used that time to evolve himself. Not be too far away from who he is right now, but to push himself even further to show new aspects of himself so that when we see him in the world title scene, we go, okay, this is the world title chapter of Jey Uso. And we saw the roots of it planted in the Intercontinental title scene. Like,
right. It's kind of like the Canadian Training Week. It's kind of like how, the Intercontinental Championship has always been like a stepping stone, right? I think we can all agree that. It's always been a stepping stone to a world championship. Because he didn't get a fair run, a fair defense with it, yeah, I feel that way. I feel like, yeah, it should have been, hey, if this wasn't going to be Jay's year to win the Rumble, all right, let him go into WrestleMania as champion, let him come out as champion. And, you got that going. It's a stepping stone for him to get to the world title. To be that he's been a champion, because I think that's what a lot of people's problems are. They're on the realm of looking at it like, well, Jay was only a champion for like 2 weeks, or a month, and now in his first defense he lost it.
And that's on the company. That's why I'm saying the surrounding context. You could take that to Charlotte as well, in the sense of like I said it a few weeks ago, the last time I was here actually when we did that giant group episode. I said Charlotte winning the Rumble, I alluded to the fact that it's not that far-fetched. Was it necessary? A lot of people said no. Matt called me a hoe. And it's because the reality of the situation is like, yeah, Matt, you put your cam on for that. What you call
it? I stand on that. Still
but here's the thing. Charlotte winning the Rumble this year, in all honesty, is actually is as appropriate as Jay's for different reasons.
Yeah.
But the reason why people look at it like as a bad thing is because of all the stuff that happened prior. Almost 16 women's championships, constantly being shoved down our throat, constantly being given opportunities over others. Matt, let me tell you something, man. There is a Bible somewhere in that house. Point I'm trying to make is like she's been given so much that for her to win a Rumble opportunity, which I know most people say the Rumble should be used for newer talent. I agree with you, but historically, it has not been done that way very often, if we're being quite honest. So by WWE's justifications, they were fine in doing that. Charlotte gets everything that she wants, essentially, in kayfabe and possibly backstage. I'm not going to blur those lines, but in reality, she gets a lot of opportunities. But in this situation, it actually made sense because the two champions that come out of it are more appropriate for her to feud with. And in reality, anyone else winning the Rumble would have been kind of like a really